To deliver exceptional results year on year, you need to engage more people. The current approach is not working. We're losing $9 trillion each year due to lost productivity from low engagement. And I may have the secret code to unlock it. Sadly, only 25% of the workforce is engaged. Another 15% is extremely unhappy and disruptive. The remaining 60% accounts for the quietly quitting, the fence-sitting, disengaged group. I've been working in manufacturing and supply chain for over 25 years in multiple countries. Involving these quiet quitters is the secret to boosting productivity and engagement, which we haven't done in decades. And cracking that code is not as hard as you think. This is why you shouldn't always burden a few diligent employees or rely on capital expenditure to fix all the issues and trying too hard to please all the disruptive employees. We've been looking at this the wrong way. The Unlock book is your guide to turn around both productivity and engagement in a simplified yet powerful framework. You just need to master these 3 steps. Build momentum by leveraging trust. Gain traction by delivering rapid results. And finally, expand your follower base by creating a culture of excellence. Do you want to over-deliver on your business plan year on year? Create a team with more individuals pulling the weight and help your team to do more, grow more, and be more. Involving the fence-sitting majority guarantees to unlock the latent capabilities of your team, so you can deliver outstanding results and create an infectiously positive culture. I'm Ishan Galapathy, and my book Unlock will help you to move the middle and move the mountain.
Here we are. We are here for the online gala party celebration for the release of his latest book, Unlock. And this is the fifth installment in what has been a national roadshow for Ishan. He's been all over the country. I was lucky enough to attend the event in Melbourne. See lots of beautiful faces in person, and it is lovely to see some beautiful faces here online. It's awesome to have you here. And we're here to both celebrate the fact that Ishan is releasing this new book and also to learn a little bit about the content within it and the way in which it will help us, hopefully to, as the name suggests, unlock the potential that exists within our businesses. My name's Cole Fink. I am a business coach and mentor, and I've been lucky enough to work with Ishan over a number of years. I have published a couple of books myself and have almost finished a third, so I know how challenging it is to create and bring a book to the world. I had 3 kids as well, and so whilst I know that I didn't contribute as much as my wife did there, I can kind of see the parallels between bringing a child into this world and bringing a book out into this world. And so it's an amazing achievement that Ishan has brought here to the world, his 3rd book. And I'm glad that you all made the time to come and celebrate. So I'm simply the MC, here to introduce the star of the show and ask him some questions, hopefully to unlock a bit of the wisdom from in the book. So what I'd like to do is I'll play you a little introductory video of Ishan, and then we will welcome the great man himself to the stage. So here we go. I'm going to press this magic button, and assuming all goes well, the next thing you see will be a video. Here we go.
I'm joined by Ishan Galapathy, Operational Excellence Strategist, Speaker and Author.
Ishan Galapathy, welcome to the show.
Ishan is a productivity expert, speaker and author. Welcome into Ticker News today.
Ishan Galapathy is an Operational Excellence Strategist, which is the most fabulous title I've read all day.
Mr. Ishan Galapathy. Ishan, welcome to the show.
Where can people get their hands on your book? Because you've put down some really great ideas for us today on the program.
Ishan Galapathy shares his approach to solving these chronic workplace stressors.
Ishan Galapathy, lovely name, but an operational excellence specialist, and he joins us right now. Ishan Galapathy.
So, ladies and gentlemen, if you could just go wild and crazy with your best online applause for Ishan Galapathy.
Thank you, Cole. And in fact, you didn't just join me in Melbourne. You were kind enough to be the MC in Melbourne, and you held the space beautifully, and you did that seamlessly. So thank you very much. Hey, I just go and speak everywhere, and I got a few of those video clips, and I handed it over to Import Export TV, and I said, can you just make a little bit of an intro video for me to use this? And that's what they did. It's amazing how, when you create those compilation videos, I'm going like, looks pretty good, actually. But, hey, Cole, your brother Cam joined me at the Channel 9 studios because as much as few things have gone right, there's something that just went horribly wrong recently.
Right.
Let me, and hopefully I've just swapped the sound correctly. Let me show you what happened to me while trying to actually get a little bit of PR, so not everything goes right all the time. So here we go. If I can press the right buttons. So here we go. There's Cam, Cole's brother.
You win some, you lose some. Ishan has flown down from Sydney for a spot on the Today Show in the Channel 9 studios. We're in the set, he's about to go on, and
Joe Biden makes an announcement and my segment gets canned. Seriously?
pretty disappointing, but we had fun anyway, and the team here were great.
Your headshot should be up there. No.
And we got to go on set, get a photo, do the things. So we made the most of a situation, but yeah, that's a bummer.
But that's what you got to do, right? You know, things don't always go the way you planned, and you've got to adapt and move on.
And we got to use Richard Wookham's dressing room. We're having a great time here.
Ishan, your 5-minute call for the Today Show.
Yeah, sure. I'll be there in a minute. Brilliant. So, yes, that's what happens. So not everything goes to plan. But the good thing is I made some good connections with Channel 9. Apparently, there's some sporting event going on in Paris. Apparently, they're going to get me back after that. Now, thank you. Thank you all for joining me. This is the Roadshow. And here we are at the virtual launch. Now, I've got to thank a few organizations who have supported me all the way through. The Import Export TV I mentioned, they've been following me across all the live in-person events. They've been my media sponsor. And then we've had the Supply Chain Logistics Association. I'm not sure if there are any. Yes, there is Irene. Just put in a yes if you're from the Supply Chain Logistics Association. And yeah, I'm not sure who else. Yes, Irene. Oh, of course, Stephen. Yeah, Stephen's one of the directors of the Supply Chain Logistics, and Talitha from Melbourne, of course. And then there's the Association for Manufacturing Excellence. And who's from Association for Manufacturing Excellence? Laura. Laura's holding the fort on both ends, being my admin and also being the person flying the flag for the association as well. Of course, Rebecca, thank you. Our national president of the Association for Manufacturing Excellence is here. Now, apologies, I've got too many windows open and I've kind of minimized them and they're overlapped. So apologies if I don't see your comments or your pictures, just apologies. And while I'm talking about that, Cole and Laura, if you can just keep an eye on the chat, and if any questions come up, just point them to me.
Can do, mate. No problem.
Yeah, brilliant. So, yeah, thank you. Now, how many of you have had an instance where you had something blatantly obvious that's been right in front of you, and you missed it? Just show of hands. Okay, you might just type in a yes if you had one of those instances that you've had something blatantly obvious in front of you and you missed it. Basically, have you been wrong before in your life? Right. Well, let me tell you what happened. Let me tell you what happened when I went to the snow with my wife, way before kids. And here we were, we had spent the day in the snow. And on the way back, it was getting dark and there was a bit of a snow blizzard and the car got stuck. I'm the engineer. I know what I'm doing. So I took the snow chains and got out of the car, and my wife was in the driver's seat. And here I was, on my knees and with the gloves off. I don't know who designed those snow chains, because once you take the gloves off and you're trying to get your hand around the back of the tire, trying to get that last link. And I'll tell you what, the fingertips are numbed and I'm trying to just blow into my fingers, trying to keep them warm and somehow connect that. I got the chains on and I quickly came around and I told my wife, saying like, okay, see if we can get the car out of the bog that we were in. Now, the chains, the tires with the chains that are on, perfectly fine. The other wheel, turning and slipping. I put the chains on the wrong tires. I thought my car was a rear-wheel drive car. Now, the scientist's wife had to tell the engineer husband, darling, I think you need to put the chains on the other tire. Now, can I say reluctantly, I've put the chains onto the other tire and obviously lived to tell the tale. I learned two things that day. The first thing was that my car was a front-wheel drive car. And I had all the reasons, right? I was the engineer and I could see that the engine was mounted in that direction. I could see the tunnel inside the car for the drive shaft. And I thought that brand of the car always made rear-wheel drive cars. But I was wrong, obviously. And the second thing I learned that day was that you see what you believe. You see what you believe. So I'd like to, sorry, just some notifications coming on. What I'd like to do is share some insights into how we can improve productivity and engagement. Now, if you're not getting traction on engagement and or productivity, perhaps you may have got the chains on the wrong tire as well. So what I'd like to do is in the next half an hour or so, share some insights as to when I plan to write the book, how some of these things clicked and created this book called Unlock, where we can engage a lot more people than we think we can, and we can deliver a lot more productivity than we think we can. So, to have a chat, Cole, would you just pull a chair next to me or come next to me and let's see, this worked beautifully well in person, but I'm sure we can make this work.
We'll give it a go.
Yes, so here we are.
So folks, what we might do here is I'll ask Ishan a few questions and see if we can tease out some insight. And one of the things that I actually love about like online meetings on Zoom or Teams or anything else is that they do give us an opportunity to actually have a slightly different experience. They don't, there are some qualities of a live event that we miss out on, but there are actually some things we can do here that we can't there. And the principal one for me is the chat box. And so what I encourage you to do is use the chat box to make any contributions or ask any questions that are popping up for you at the time, because there can be this bit of a back channel of communication. And I have a few questions that I want to ask Ishan, but I'm perfectly happy to spring a completely random question that he's not expecting on him too, you see. So by all means, if there's something that you want to know, stick it in the chat box and I can either ask it on your behalf or you can unmute yourself and ask it yourself. We'll see how we go. But firstly, Ishan, in your little intro video, I don't know which journalist it is, but she goes, Ishan Galapati is an operational excellence strategist, and she talks about how that's the coolest name that anyone's ever had. Why don't you describe for those of us who are perhaps a bit slow, what is an operational excellence strategist?
Yeah, I mean, my last name is bad enough, right? For these poor Anglo-Saxon tongues that, just can't that one, and I've stuck in an operational excellence strategist. I call it, well, let me try and answer it this way. So back in my last corporate role, so when I was with Kellogg looking after all of the Asia Pac, obviously, it was a traveling job. And once you got kind of settled in your seats, and then the obvious kind of polite question to ask is, what do you do? Well, what's your name and what do you do, right? So I used to be asked this question of what do you do? And obviously, you say the fancy title of, yes, I'm the Asia Pacific Operational Excellence Manager. And by the time I say my name and the title, the plane's already landing in Joburg, right? It's that long. And then people ask, well, what exactly is it? Just like you asked. And I would say, well, actually, it's just using continuous improvement concepts, both from a strategic point of view, but also from a practical perspective of training and facilitating and embedding those practices to reduce the cost of manufacturing. And you still get these blank looks. And people then ask, so you must be putting robots and trying to reduce the cost of manufacturing. And then I go, well, not really, because that's engineering. They have the budget and they do all of that. And then some ask the question of, well, maybe you're helping to buy cheaper ingredients. And they go, well, not really, because that's procurement and QA, quality assurance, they actually do that. And then there's this puzzled look as to how exactly do you then reduce the cost in manufacturing, right? And the simple answer that I share is, well, it's actually with people and processes. And in the Western world, when we look at our profit and loss statements, bulk of the costs incurred from a manufacturing perspective, the direct cost, is in that labor component. It swaps if you go into some of the Asian countries or the developing countries, but here, or in first world countries, it's certainly in the labor bucket. So trying to optimize how people interact with the processes is where the biggest sandpit is in a cost structure. So I used to just basically tear up with the supply chain directors, create the strategy as to how to do it, but also roll up the sleeves, do the training, facilitate, mentor, coach, and everything in between. So that's what an operational excellence strategist does.
Excellent. So Unlock is your third book. And as I understand it, I love Douglas Adams, the increasingly inaccurately named trilogy of 5, as he kept adding books. But this is the third book, and it's not one that like completely stands alone. There's an arc that you're following. So can you describe to us what are the first 2 books and how do they lead into what you've created here?
Yeah, let me see. So the first one that I wrote is called Hidden Growth Opportunities. And if anyone's familiar with my website, or if you go to the website, you will see that that's not the cover. The title is Hidden Growth Opportunities, but the cover is not that. So currently it's out of stock, waiting for the 3rd edition. Love the content, hate the cover. So its current edition's got this cartoonish character. So asked the publisher, hey, can you quickly mock up a potential 3rd edition cover? So I like this, and most likely it'll look something like this. Anyway, what this is about is called, what I've noticed, when companies grow, and this is true mainly for privately owned businesses as opposed to the multinationals or, like the big boys. A lot of the companies, when they grow, the top line goes that way and the bottom line starts going the other way as a percentage, right? So, absolute number might be, yeah, we are making a better profit, but as a percentage, the number starts going down. Now, that's because the complexity within the business grows faster than the top line. So for those businesses who are perhaps wondering, what do I do? Do I scale back, or how do I optimize? That's the book, in terms of sharing some insights as to how best of the best companies, they continue to improve the bottom line, irrespective of what the situation surrounding them are. You hear a lot of businesses up in arms about the input costs going up. Here in Australia, we got a lot of, energy and, import costs and all of that. But hey, the best of the best, it affects them as well. but they always find opportunities from within. Why? Because of that sandpit that I mentioned about. There's a lot that we can control from within. So that book is to share some insights as to how there is a thing called continuous improvement, more than just the English dictionary concept, but here are some of the structures. Then came advance just before the world went into the lockdown. Now, if people are aware that there is a continuous improvement concept, then this book provides the how. It's a complete DIY framework, extremely simplified on how to implement a methodology that's going to improve their bottom line year on year. Because when I was in that last role with Kellogg, we had the opportunity to go and look at a lot of the best factories around the world. A lot of these companies, the Procter Gambles, the companies, the usual suspects, shall we say. And when I look at those companies, they have massive programs on how to implement and how to run those factories. They also have global teams and heavy governance structures to maintain. A lot of companies don't have that kind of bandwidth, capacity, patience, and capabilities to develop a program or even maintain one of those programs. So what I've done is I've played Jenga. If you've got kids or nieces or nephews, you'll be familiar with the game Jenga, right? You've got to pull out those things and try to keep the tower steady. I've kind of played Jenga with continuous improvement, and this is perhaps the most simplified version of, without the whole thing collapsing, that a company can implement. And most of my work now with my clients is helping them to implement this framework so that they can get the work. And then we all know it's not the magic of the tool or the template or the technique. The magic is in how we bring our people along the journey, right? It's all in the change management. It's all in the engagement. So whilst here is the framework, and I think this is the flip side of the coin, or as my friend Bernard says, the two hands that wash each other. So I think Advance and Unlock are the two books or the two hands that wash each other to provide a complete solution for companies to on the what and the how.
Yeah, I love it. And I love the fact that you have simplified what is such an enormously complex, like the world of continuous improvement. Every time I've looked into it, I've been overwhelmed by the complexity of it. And so it doesn't surprise me that by simplifying it, you've actually made it more accessible.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, I know you've got a bit of a manufacturing background, right? And you keep that under wraps. And you only bring it up when you talk to people like me in manufacturing. Yeah. The thing with continuous improvement, and lean is one of those methodologies. But the thing with lean is that it's almost like you got to learn Japanese first before you start implementing, right? There's all these Japanese words that just is thrown around, and I don't know why we do that, right? There's this, Kanban and Shitsuki and, Pokeyoke, and it sounds like either you're swearing at someone or trying to do something indecent. It's just like, no, I'm not poking anything. Pokeyoke means error proofing, like designing a USB that only fits in the right way. So why not call it error proofing, right?
So in the chat box, Somasundaram, hope I pronounced that correctly, has raised the point, and I agree entirely, that we collectively keep saying that human resources are our greatest asset, and yet you see industry fail time and time again to actually treat human resources as the best asset and to do it. And it feels to me like this book is your answer to that same realization, basically. So what is, in your view, what is the core issue with engagement, and why have we so consistently failed to get this right?
Cool. I think there's a couple of things, and I heavily use Gallup data to kind of create my hypothesis to write this book, right? Now, Gallup for if you're not familiar, they're like the global authority when it comes to measuring global engagement. And what I love about Gallup is that data is available to anyone. So you can pull up the reports and you can do whatever you want, and it's available in different parts of the world. I think, Cole, there are a couple of things that's not right. And the first thing is, if I show this slide, and I promise this is the only slide that I'm going to show, and let me see if I can show on full screen. So according to, come back up here. According to Gallup, there are three types of people. It always comes in threes. I don't know why, right? Have you heard of that? The other three types of people from an accounting or perspective. There are people who can count and those who can't. That's as funny as I'm going to get, folks. So I'm glad that you didn't turn up for my stand-up routine. So some of you going like, what's that got to do? All right, let's move on. According to Gallup, here's the real thing that I wanted to talk about. There are three types of people. The first are the engaged people. These are the hardworking, diligent people. These are the type of people that you want in your team. And I bet you know who these people are, because these are the 2 or 3 people that you always go to get things done. They are the problem solvers. They are the ones who deploy initiatives. They're the ones who do your transformations. They're the ones who expedite things. They're the ones, when you have complaints, go and follow them up. And they're the ones who, run the business as usual as well, right? Now, the problem with that is that these people are getting tired. They're getting dragged from pillar to post. They're overwhelmed. They're stretched, burnt. Now, if you don't look after them, either they're going to leave or they're going to soon become disengaged, right? Because there's a lot that they're carrying on their shoulders. The second type is the disgruntled, disruptive, really unhappy people. And I reckon you know who these people are too. These are the people, if you sit next to these people in the canteen to have a cup of tea, you can't get up and leave quickly enough, because these people complain about how bad the world is, how bad the country is, how bad the company is, how bad the equipment is, how bad the communication is. And you know what? Life is never right for these people. And you just feel like your whole life has been sucked out of you. And these are those disruptive people. Now, the graph, so the dotted line are the happy people and the dark line are those disruptive, unhappy people. Now, you don't need Six Sigma statistical abilities, and you don't, your primary school kid will tell you happy people number going up and unhappy people number coming down is a good thing, right? And it is. The problem is this, Cole. The problem is not so apparent until you start looking at the third figure, the third type of people, which is that one. And I apologize if that yellowish is not very clear on screen. These are the fence-sitting, quietly quitting group. And there are about 60% of them as at the 2024 data. Rounding up, right? So happy people are about 25%. So only about a quarter are engaged. About 15% are disruptive, and about 60% are sitting on the fence. Now, I know that these quiet quitters are only seemingly disengaged. They want to be involved. And we've been working too hard, Cole, for a very small result of shifting that needle. I reckon, and the whole hypothesis is based on this concept of, why have we as a community of business leaders, why have we as a community of HR, because I think HR traditionally have owned the space of developing and building the capabilities of our people, why have we been focusing so much on these disruptive, unhappy people? We should have just leave them in a corner. And, just because you're throwing a tantrum, leave them in the corner and work with these fence sitters. And I've found that we can achieve a lot more. And that's the whole premise of the book in a framework.
Right. So if I understand correctly, basically we've been over investing time and effort and resources into that minority number of people who are actively disgruntled and, in a sense, who want to go.
Yeah.
And then there's this silent majority where all this potential is built into them, and yet we haven't been adequately or effectively investing in them to get them over the line and convert them into our actively engaged participants.
Yeah. So in a diagrammatic way.
Oh, nice.
Oh, here we go. So you go from the top, here's a nice bell curve, and, this is only schematic, so it's not to the percentage, the percentages that I mentioned, but we know there's, a lot in the middle that are just unhappy. So leave the left end of unhappy people as is, just start growing from the fence sitters, and, it's easier to convert those individuals in the middle.
Yep. I love it. How have we ended up here? Like, what thinking led us to be in the position that we're in that requires this kind of intervention?
What I see from business leaders, one of the, if I can call it a misconception, business leaders feel like they need to carry the weight of all these issues on their shoulders. So they try to fix the problem for the people. And in doing so, what we do is we kind of alienate the people, because, the people tend to just throw the monkey off their back onto you as the leader. And now it's on your shoulders, right? And then you carry the burden and you're trying to fix it. So one of the things I share with my clients and leaders is that don't fix it for the people, fix it with them. That little involvement of getting them involved to fix the problems is what's going to turn them into being from fence sitting to becoming engaged. So that's perhaps from a practical perspective. And from a philosophical perspective, I wonder whether, like Jack Welch, who did great for General Electrics back in the 80s, one of his mantras was promote the top 10% and fire the bottom 10%. So I think perhaps we've been working to that model as well, just focusing on the high performers and, focusing on the top 10. And perhaps, focusing on the bottom 10 as well, getting them out wherever we can. But that mindset of top 10, bottom 10, and trying to fix it on yourself, I reckon, in my humble opinion, is how we've ended up in this spot.
Yeah. So Mohan Obesekera, hopefully I've gone somewhere near pronouncing
Get it right,
correctly.
Mohan Obesekera. We went to school together.
Oh, cool. Is asking what's the way forward to unlock the potential of these fence sitters. So that seems like the perfect excuse for me to ask you to kind of let us in, give us a bit of a preview of the book. What is the unlock framework? Like what are the principles that you're teaching in the book that you're hoping we're going to be able to learn from and implement?
Yeah. Thank you. And it's almost like a planted question. Thanks, Mohan. And it's not, right? Obviously, he's right. He's thinking exactly what I'm thinking as well. The framework, like with most of my books and my presentations and my workshops, so I try to simplify everything. The starting point in all of this is we've got to work with the engaged few. There's no other way, right? And it's something that you got to start very carefully, because, as I said, these people are change fatigued, and there's a thing called change fatigued now. So you don't want to be going to these individuals and saying, hey, we're going to fix this place. Here we go, and we're going to transform this workplace, and once and for all, we're going to get these fence sitters on board. I think that kind of language is not going to help. But what would help is if you can find some initiatives where that aligns both from perspective of strategically, it makes sense to the business to solve a strategic problem, or fix an area of the business that it requires strategically to be improved. But also, it's an area that people traditionally feel like is a pain point for them as well. So if you can start by fixing one of those areas that beautifully aligns, makes makes a difference to the business, but also makes a difference to the people. And we try to fix these. So here's what I do. I get some of the engaged few to lead these initiatives, and I infuse them carefully crafted project teams, and I infuse them with the fence sitters. Because what the fence sitters love is they want to get involved, they just haven't been given an opportunity. So we give them a tight scope, we tell them 10 weeks, because it nicely fits into a business quarter that is only 13 weeks. And, the engaged few know exactly what to do in terms of, solving those problems. And you as a business leader, all you need to do is guide, coach, mentor, remove roadblocks, and get these teams to actually solve those problems or fix the areas in the business. That is where you're building momentum. And you're doing that by leveraging leveraging the belief and trust of the engaged few, right? You're on a very fine line of, I guess, cashing in that currency of belief and trust, because you've been going to these individuals over and over again. So tread carefully and find an area that you believe is going to make a big difference. So that's the starting point. The other part is gaining traction, right? So how do you do everything in your capacity to help these teams to generate momentum, whether it is the overtime they need or whether it is the bits and pieces that they need. It's never capital expenditure. I've always found that teams are really creative, and all they need is just a little bit of sundry expense, right? And that last part of expanding followers, this is where at the end of a business quarter, perhaps, when you have things like town hall communications or any form of business information sessions, I always invite these groups to come and present to the fellow employees. I reckon that our employees are more welcoming to hear good news and to hear progress from their fellow employees than from a business leader with a flashy PowerPoint slide sitting behind, showing from sitting behind a lectern. So you'll see that this is a cyclical model. So if what I've just mentioned is just basically one revolution, and in that one revolution, all you may have done is maybe get one or two fence sitters to perhaps think differently. May not be engaged, but they may think differently. Do another turn. Now, you're not only doing one project team, you may have two or three, but it's the careful orchestration of running these projects, sprints, you got different names for these, but the concept is the same. Led by engaged few, and you basically infuse them with those fence sitters, and the osmosis of the excitement from the engaged tends to do wonders for those fence sitters. It's a little bit like Jim Collins talks about the flywheel concept. So it's exactly the same model, right? Because the engaged can't not be excited because they're engaged. So they will lead. And then when they lead and when people see that they're starting to make progress, it's a bit like when you watch getting Windows updates, you see that little progress bar moving up, right? Something happens, right? It's almost like the happy chemical starts to kick in, perhaps a little bit of dopamine. So similarly, when the project starts to get traction and delivering progress, people are getting excited. They can't not get not excited, right? I'm just talking Jim Collins language here. And then finally, when you share that kind of positive news in terms of here's what the teams have done and they're sharing with their teams, you're creating a highly infectiously positive work culture where it's almost like a rising tide call lifts all boats, right? A rising tide lifts all boats. And that's what you want. You want to create this infectiously positive work culture where people feel happy, people want to get engaged. And as you keep going round and round this cycle, you are converting more and more of the fence sitters to become engaged. Slightly longish answer, but I think it was probably worth it. And thanks, Mohan, for bringing that up.
That's awesome, mate. So obviously, like all textbooks, there's a theory that's posited in there, which you've just kind of unpacked the basics of. Do you have any case studies or examples of applying this in practice and, like places where people can be inspired by what others have managed to achieve by applying this in practice?
Yeah, well, this book is all full of stories. So I didn't want to write, it falls into the category of a leadership book. And the last thing I wanted to do is give a business leader a book saying, hey, here's chapter 1. And here are 3 dot points of, learning from chapter 1s. It's just like no, these are smart people. So if I share that framework, so there are 3 chapters in part 1 of building momentum, 6 chapters of gaining traction, and then 3 chapters of expanding followers. But all those 12 chapters, I've shared a personal story. And I've also shared like a global case study on how whatever that concept is, how that's being demonstrated in real life. So I think then it basically hits you between the eyes, right? And they're collectively they create a framework, but you can also take a little bit of salt and pepper if that's all you need, just for a little bit of inspiration.
Love it. So obviously I follow you on LinkedIn, and I have seen you starting to promote a podcast. So given that anyone who's reading the book is likely to be interested in the podcast, why don't you tell us about that?
Well, there are a few people here who will know that I've been talking about a podcast for a good 2 years, at least. And when I started writing this, and I thought, wow, if I ever convert any of my books into an audiobook, Unlock will probably be the first one to get into an audiobook. And as I was thinking that, I thought, geez, it's probably a good place to start my podcast. So what I did was got hold of Chris Ashmore, whom I've been talking to for a long time. So Chris is my wonderful podcast producer, and I said, Chris, I want to convert all the chapters into an episode. So we spent a couple of days and we did a bulk recording, and it's not an audiobook by any stretch of the imagination, but each chapter I'm narrating kind of unplugged, right? I'm telling the story and I'm sharing the insights kind of in a 15-20 minutes. So there's about 12-13 episodes, obviously with the introductory and the conclusion parts. So it's a solo, solo podcast. And because it can get a little bit boring, just listening to my voice only all the way across, what I thought was I'll invite industry experts, business leaders who are doing great work in this place, and ask some questions as well. So we kind of got into this routine where I've got some good supply chain directors, operations directors who have done good work in supply chain excellence, leveraging these concepts with some of the well-known brands and companies. And so every second episode, we go into an interview, but we kind of going along the chapters of the book. We are up to 9th episode, which is probably, I think, chapter 4, I think, from memory. There you go.
Superb. So I think we're at that stage of the night where we get to give things away. Is that right?
Yeah. I had the recording here, but I'm not going to play the recording, the trailer. I'm conscious of time. I want to give more time for people to ask questions. So let me quickly. All right, we're back here. What do we do now? Cool.
Well, so I think this is also available as an ebook. Like I think there was, essentially everyone here obviously has generously come along and hung out. I reckon we should furnish them with gifts.
Yes. So, thank you, Laura. Look at you, right on the money. Now, so the big launch today, I guess, if you go, so people who came to the in-person events, they were given a copy of the real book. And what I'd like to do is, so today is the launch of the ebook of Unlock. So you were the first to find out, and you were the first who have access. Now, I've dropped the price because I can't make it zero, I think. So it's 99 cents US dollars. That's the best I can do. You probably 99 cents, and depending on each one of the versions, whether you want the Kindle or the Apple or Google Books, and whether you're paying Australian dollars, so it might be, it'll be under $2 for sure. But 99 cents. Laura has Laura has shared that. So please, you got all the links, you got all the scans. Grab a copy and enjoy.
Absolutely love it. So I think one other thing we could do before we wrap up is I think you've got a slide in your deck like showing all the chapters that are there. So it might be cool if we had a look at that. And folks, if any of you have a question that you'd like to ask Ishan, now would be the time to drop it in the chat box if there's anything you'd like him to cover. And you can see there a list of the topics that are covered there in the book. And Ishan, one last question from me, just because it said such a genius chapter title. What does smart factories and dumb operators mean?
I'll try to give a succinct answer. It's probably one of the slightly longest chapters, but please keep your questions coming in. Smart factories and dumb operators in the context of leveraging employees to improve productivity. What's happened as we have gone through the 4 industrial revolutions over the last 250 years, right? Very quickly. So late 18th century, we mastered steam, productivity went up, and costs came down, right? Because all the weaving mills, etc. Early 1900s, we discovered electricity, the electric motors, and through that came the mass assembly factories, Henry Ford, Model T, case in point. Productivity went up, costs came down. In about 1940s, 1960s, Hewlett-Packard, Intel comes into the world, and the world of robotics and computing come along. And again, productivity goes up and costs come down. 2011 is when Germany created and coined the phrase Industry 4.0 after the GFC as a way of rebooting their economy and trying to promote everything from all the wonderful technology that German companies produce. And the premise of Industry 4 is to connect everything and anything that's got an IP address and that can be connected. And what we're hoping is we can increase productivity and reduce cost again. What's happening in the space of, so I'm not anti-technology, let me just give that disclaimer. Studied mechatronics at the University. but what's happened is, as we've been going through the 4 industrial revolutions, we've taken people from the farm, we've dumped them down and given them a spanner, for example, saying, keep tightening the bolt on the left wheel for eight hours. And in that process, and also as computing and technology has advanced, we're trying to find an app, a tool or technology as a way of shortcutting the process of getting people involved to improve productivity. And in that, we are further, we think that we're dumbing down people. Dumb operators is not a name; it's actually an acronym. And the dumb stands for devalued, underutilized, misunderstood, and belittled operators, right? That's what this move, that's what these 60% of fence sitters represent. And I think they're sadly waiting to be developed and understood and motivated and believed in. So that chapter is dedicated to, if you believe that artificial intelligence is better than natural intelligence, boy, oh boy, I think the end is near. So that's what that chapter is about, and that there's a lot that we can leverage from the people.
Love it, mate. We've got a couple of questions from the audience. From Mohan again. How does employee ego come into play to improve productivity?
Yes. And I share that in a good sense. So this is where now the fence sitters are on the verge of getting engaged. And I'll share the story. So one of the people that I was working with last year with this company, major multinational company, and we go through getting these individuals involved in a project, and we shifted about 35% of productivity in 10 weeks, right? They were making 100 widgets a shift, and we got it up to 136 in 10 weeks. And one of the lads I was talking to, coincidentally a Sri Lankan lad, Sanjeeva, and I was talking to him during a coffee chat, during morning tea, during these sessions, and said, hey, tell me what you've seen in the last few weeks of what we do, and hey, it's great work you guys have done. We've brought up the productivity by 35%. And what he said was, Ishan, let me share some insights about what this means to me. He said, Ishan, all my friends work for Amazon and all these big company names, and whenever we get together in a barbecue or in a personal scenario, they talk about the projects that they're working on, and they talk about what they have done. And I didn't even understand what a project was. So I used to make shit up so that I can keep up. I can keep up in the conversation, right? And at that moment, I realized what was going on. And he said, what I now do is I know what a project is, and Sanjeev is now actually leading projects, right? Subsequently to that point, he said, I don't need to make things up now. I talk about, what we do and, the problem solving we do. And it's actually allowed him in a personal scenario to kind of have that puffed chest, right? Because his ego and in a good sense, right? In a good sense, he's quite happy to share what he's able to contribute at work. And at that point, I realized he's talking about Maslow's levels of hierarchy. It's the number 4th level that's basically clicked for him. Doing this kind of work helps people to be recognized amongst peers as, hey, I've made it, right? So leveraging the ego, when it comes to chapter 11, and we're talking about how do you expand the follower base, is about finding the Sanjeevas in your place. If you do the work and get them to that point, I reckon you got loyalty plus, because people believe that you've provided opportunities for them to shine within the company, but so much more powerful when they go outside and they can talk about, hey, look at me. I've arrived. I've achieved.
Yep. Love it. Final question before we go from Stephen Lakey. Do you find that most companies follow the disengaged fence sitters engaged model?
Companies follow.
Stephen, if you want to unmute yourself, you
Yeah.
can ask.
Thanks, Cole. Ishan, the question is just: is it like just manufacturing? Is it all companies we would find this? I suspect it's all companies, but what do you think?
I think it's a fair bet that Gallup does the survey across many sectors, not just in manufacturing. It's just that the examples that I get to see are from the manufacturing or supply chain, right? You know, I only work with people who either make something or move something. So no, I reckon it's a global phenomenon. And it applies across, right? When I was doing some of the radio interviews, I was doing some of the podcasts as the PR campaign for this, and particularly with the podcast, a lot of people not many people have podcasts in manufacturing. So I was talking to people kind of in the broad leadership space, and they were connecting with this concept very much. And they were saying like, yeah, this is seen across sectors.
Yeah, awesome. Ishan, this has been amazing. Any final thoughts from you before we thank everybody for coming along and wrap this up?
Yeah. Two things. I'm going to stay. So we're going to officially close at 7 because, you know, as a productive person, I want to respect time. So we will officially close at 7, but I will wait until the last person has logged out because you may have a question and you may have a little bit of extra time. So hang back and I'll answer your questions after that. On that note, we got about 30 seconds to go. So number of people to thank. You know, let's start with Laura. You know, been amazing. Thank you for organizing the in-person events, dealing with the function centers, getting the people in, all of that. Thank you. It's been amazing to have you. Cole, you've done 2 of the 4, and Mark Butler did the other 2 as emceeing. So again, this would have been a very boring. I'm talking just to the attendees, but you just make it you make it look easy, but emceeing is not easy. So thank you, not only for
Welcome,
emceeing,
mate. Thank you.
Not only for emceeing, but you've been both a formal and an informal mentor in the past years, and that has made a big difference. So thank you. To all the people who have been supporters and who are here, some of you are going to watch this on replay. You've sent me notes saying you can't make it, but you're going to watch this on replay. So thank you for your continual support. And the associations, Supply Chain Logistics Association, we've got the end of year awards coming up. So if you're in Australia and if you want to submit, it's open at the moment. Association for Manufacturing Excellence, thank you again for the last 15 years, for supporting and the opportunity to kind of help advance the manufacturing sector in Australia. Transformers Unite. Bernie Kelly leads that, and he's helped me to promote this program, this roadshow, and of course, Import Export TV. If I forgot to mention anyone's name, then apologies for everyone who's been a supporter, a cheerer, been there for me, Fleur, at a time when I need. So thank you. Thank you all. And that would be the formal closeout of the book launch. I'll wait for a few seconds for the people who want to leave. And then if there are a few who are staying back, you probably have a question or 2, or you just want to have a chat, and we can do exactly that.